May God Save Us is set in what was the incredibly hot summer of 2011 in Madrid, Spain, a time and place characterized by economic crisis. It was when the anti-austerity movement had erupted in May of that year, where demonstrators protested against high unemployment rates, welfare cuts, the political system, capitalism, banks, and corruption. Not to mention the 1.5 pilgrims awaiting the arrival of the Pope for World Youth Day. It was a Catholic event held in August of that year. During all this chaos, a shitstorm breaks out when it is revealed that a serial killer might be on the loose who is raping and murdering elderly women. Police inspectors Veralde and Alfaro set out to lead an investigation to hunt down the killer, but their investigation won't be effortless, of course, and as they relentlessly carry out a merciless chase against the clock marred by red herrings, they will also encounter many internal conflicts within the police force as well as in their personal lives. Now, every time a cop thriller like this comes out, a film in which you have two cops who are partners but who really seem to be diametrically opposed to each other in almost every aspect, it will inevitably be compared to other films in a similar vein, and a film it has been compared to and has also been cited as a major influence by the director himself is David Fincher's Seven and the first season of the True Detective TV series. I think the comparison between May God Save Us and those other works is definitely justified, and even quite complimentary, I think, because I think this film definitely manages to pull off exactly what Seven and True Detective managed to pull off so marvelously, and that they were these crime stories that were much less about the crimes and about the criminal committing those crimes, and much more about the detectives investigating those crimes, who are ultimately revealed to be pretty terrible human beings themselves. I mean, they are no saints whatsoever, and I think their journey is as much an external one, about them chasing down and hunting down this killer, as well as an internal one, as well as a journey about self-discovery and about learning things about each other. I really do think that those films and this films as well is pretty much about fighting demons on all fronts, fighting all of your demons at the same time. The two main characters are played by two absolutely excellent actors, and while you might think that the dynamic between the characters might prove to be the typical, good cop, bad cop routine, trust me, these characters are about as fully realized and as three-dimensional as they get in a film like this. We get to find out a lot about them, probably even more than we would like to, probably a little bit too much, because like I said, ultimately it is revealed that both of them do have some pretty nasty characteristics about them. Alfonso, or what is his name? Alfaro, is pretty extroverted, loudmouth, brash, cynical, hard-headed, impatient, and aggressive type, but he can also prove to be quite charming and fun every now and then. Veralde, on the other hand, is quite the introverted type. He is quiet, polite, strategic, patient, serious, and very socially awkward, but also very work-oriented. This very dualistic nature of the film is pretty apparent in all of its aspects. It's quite interesting. There's a very clear sense that this film has been split into two parts, two halves, and they are both filmed differently and edited differently. They have different pacing. And the first half of the film is more of the detective part of the film, let's say. It's filmed with this handheld camera, it's pretty shaky, and it's filmed like a documentary almost. The first part of the film, the first half, is more of the investigation part of the story, the detective part of the story. It's when our cops find the first body, and nobody really seems to be taking the case seriously, besides Veralde, of course, who is always one step ahead of everyone else, who is always asking the questions that nobody else seems to be asking, because he desperately wants to find a link, to find a pattern, to link all of these murders together, because they seem to be quite similar, but he is the only one who sees it at this point. Alfaro, his partner, on the other hand, really couldn't give much less of a shit. And you kind of start to understand his attitude somewhat. He even has a line in the film in which he says that working too much is for morons. Contrary to his partner, Veralde, who is kind of a dork. He is a workaholic, he is single, he doesn't have anyone, doesn't have kids, not a family man. He, on the other hand, Alfaro, is a family man. He does have a wife, he does have kids, and he's kind of having a hard time communicating with his family. So he has a lot on his mind right now, and you kind of understand him. It turns him into a sympathetic and likable person, but very quickly we get to find out that there's also this very unsympathetic and very unlikable side to him as well, because he has these very, very, very serious anger issues, and it's something that he has been punished for and treated for already, because once he attacked one of his colleagues in the police station, it's pretty clear during the film that he still had these incredibly violent urges, and he is basically like the quintessential bully. But the interesting thing is that while these two guys who are partners, who are diametrically opposed to each other, as I said, they really do seem to kind of get along. They really do seem to kind of like understand each other and be able to work off each other. And there's a scene, an example in which they use Alfaro's sort of reputation as being this violent bully to their advantage, because they get to a crime scene and another police force is already there investigating, and they are not allowed to go into the building. So Alfaro attacks the leader of that police force, and basically he is doing it as a sort of distraction, so Veralde can get into the building himself and investigate while everyone is distracted by the fighting that's going on. And I actually do think that this is the part in the film when they discover the second body. So yeah, so this first half of the film, like I said, is much more about the investigation. It's much more about us finding out things about our main characters. It's much more about them going around asking questions and certain times being greeted with hostility. There is a scene, for example, in which a woman does absolutely not want to let these two guys in her house because she says that the police put her boyfriend in the hospital because he went to some sort of rally. So you really get the sense that this is a community in which people really don't trust the police, really don't respect the police, are really actually afraid of the police. And as the movie goes along, it's actually not surprising to see why, because they can be quite scumbags every now and then. Their boss, for example, actually tells them that, okay, look, we're conducting this investigation, but let's be quiet about it. Let's keep absolute discretion, because I don't want anyone finding out that there's some sick fuck out there who is going around raping and murdering old women. Not while the Pope's visiting, absolutely not. So it's very interesting how the law enforcement in this film is presented as something quite chaotic and even quite malignant. I mean, they are actually more concerned about not smearing their image than they are about public safety. It isn't until the second half of the film in which eventually it does turn into more of a traditional thriller. It's already filmed differently, as I said. We go from a handheld camera to a Steadicam, and we go from these very shaky images and shots to more harmonious images, and we are finally introduced to our killer, of course. And it's quite interesting, it's also quite jarring, because we do realize that the two cops and the killer have a lot in common. And it's basically where the whole film comes together as a whole. It's where all of the narrative threads gel together and all of the pieces of the puzzle are finally in place, and we do understand eventually that, okay, obviously this is a film about violence, duh, it's about two cops investigating a murderer, but it's a little bit more layered than just simply that. It's about the violence that exists simultaneously above the surface, but also below it. And to quote the director of the film, who said that it's about violence spawned by modern societies, cities, and it's about three psychopaths who related to violence in very different but very recognizable ways. And this dynamic between lawmen and criminals, but ultimately being very similar and having a lot of things in common, is quite interesting. Like even Veralde, the guy who you would think is the good guy, the nice guy, the morally balanced person, even he is proven to have violent tendencies, and in a pretty uncomfortable scene, to say the least. While the killer, on the other hand, is an excellent master of disguise or a chameleon, so to speak, because he used to be part of a church. He took communion at a church, and even though everyone at the church knew that he has a special relationship with his mother, to put it mildly, as one priest says, no one ever fought to let anyone know or to consider it to be a problem. So the film, like I said early on, the way it sort of criticizes law enforcement, it also criticizes religion, and more specifically it criticizes institutions and organizations as a whole. And when you're taking all of that into consideration, the title of the film, May God Save Us, and the setting of the film really makes a lot of sense. I think it's very interesting how it also shows that it takes a certain type of person to be able to kill other people, but I think it also says that it takes a certain type of person to be able to track down people who kill other people. In a way, I think that to be able to track down killers, you kind of have to think like a killer yourself, in a way. It's pretty interesting. And my only pretty minor complaint about the film is that I think the antagonist of the film is a little bit uninteresting, because I think he is only interesting as he is in relation to the other two characters, to the two cops, because he really seems to possess all of their strengths and pretty much none of their weaknesses. He is all that both of them wish they were, and nothing that they actually are, because he, like I said, he is a chameleon, he is a master manipulator, he is charming, he is smooth talking, and being a psychopath that makes him all the more dangerous. And my one and only major complaint about the film has to do with the very end of the film, the ending, the last 5 minutes basically, which feels sort of like an extra act. It feels like almost like an epilogue they attached to the film. It's incredibly jarring because it's something that takes place 3 years after all that we've seen before in the film, and it's something that felt incredibly rushed. It felt incredibly tacked on and uninspired and even unnecessary. I truly believe that the film could have ended 5 minutes earlier and it would have been perfect. It would have been much darker, that's for sure, but hey, Seven is incredibly dark, and that movie rules, so why couldn't this movie end on a much darker note? It's still dark, it still ends on a dark note, it's still pretty pessimistic, but they tried to give it some sort of closure in the end, and I really don't think it worked, and I really didn't like the ending of the film at all. So those last 5 minutes, didn't like it. Everything else, it's a very good movie, and I highly recommend it for that. So those will be my 2 cents on May God Save Us, folks. I really hope you check this movie out because it's pretty good, and if you like cop thrillers, this is pretty fucking awesome, and I definitely recommend it. So my question to you guys would be, what are some of your favorite cop thrillers? Pure and simple. Don't forget to leave your answers down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching my review as always. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can see you later with other reviews. And until then, folks, as always, stay cool, stay awesome, and goodbye.